Hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I would like to thank you for coming to the Basquiat Society of Raleigh event. Yes, it's on Valentine's Day. It is February 14th, 2024, and we are excited to have Winston Brady here. He is the Director of Communications and the Press.
Yeah, curriculum at Thales Press.
And curriculum at Thales Press at the Thales Academy for 12 years, right? Mm-hmm. And we are really happy about his topic, which we feel is very much in line with what Basquiat Society is about, big government and machine politics. And before I introduce him any further, I'd just like you to know he wrote a novel called The Inferno. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and take it away. Thank you.
Brad, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. As Brad mentioned, my name is Winston Brady, and I'm the Director of Curriculum at Thales Press at Thales Academy. And it's my joy to be here tonight. And I want to thank Brad especially for this opportunity to come here and speak, and for organizing this whole group, right? Helping bring this into being. I think Alexis de Tocqueville will be very, very happy with what everybody is doing here. He wrote about the value of public associations, civic groups like this, where individuals come together. And this one is united by the love of liberty and the principles of freedom. And so it's just a really wonderful group. We're here to encourage each other in these things, and really to game plan how we can extend that love and appreciation of liberty to as many people as we possibly can. Let's see. Okay. Tonight, though, I'm here to talk. I've been teaching for about 12 years at Thales Academy, and I stepped into a role where I'm writing a lot of curriculum and books, mostly history, but also Latin and philosophy and other works, just anything that we can do to make it easier on our teachers to teach and our students to study everything that is good, true, and beautiful. Tonight, though, I want to argue that the institutions that we call big government are best explained through this idea of political machines that have operated in every big city in America since the earliest days of the American Republic. These political machines carry with them the image of smoke-filled back rooms where corrupt politicians fix campaigns like they were doing no more than rigging a horse race. And while many people think that they're a relic from the 19th century that we abandoned, thankfully, during the progressive era. So, what is a political machine? Well, a political machine converts political participation, like voting and campaigning, into money, or the equivalent of such a sum. Such sums were the topic of conversation in those smoke-filled back rooms, with the money being something of a wealth transfer or a benefit administered by the government through the machine that often looks like rent-seeking, when a group seeks an economic benefit without contributing anything of value in return for that benefit. And most importantly, though, it includes the concept of patronage, the ability to give someone a job, which is of course an ongoing series of monetary payments. If someone campaigns for you and helps you get elected into office, you should help them get a job, not only to repay them, but so you can get their help again next election cycle. And to walk through this relationship between the political machine and big government, and how they work, how really big government really is a political machine, I'm going to walk through the topic in 3 parts. The first part is going through the nature of the machine. The second part is the New Deal and the machine. And the third part, the third section, is the significance of the machine, and how machine politics can help us better understand contemporary political issues. So first, the nature of the machine and how it operates. What sorts of incentives that it operates on? Chief amongst these incentives is that idea of legal plunder, taken from Frederick Bastiat's The Law. So legal plunder is, these political machines execute the wealth transfer that is legal plunder, a kind of legitimized theft wherein one group takes from another, overseen by the state. Such a transfer is described by Bastiat in The Law, where he writes, "How is such legal plunder to be identified? Quite simply, see if the law takes from some persons what belongs to them, and gives it to other persons to whom it does not belong. See if the law benefits one citizen at the expense of another by doing what the citizen himself cannot do without committing a crime. And in the United States, it's the political machine that carries out this legal plunder on behalf of such favored groups, and of course, the politicians who oversee the transaction. And in the United States, we have a long history of political machines. In the top left corner, we have Martin Van Buren, who's a prominent 19th century politician. He was a U.S. president, and he was the founder of the Democratic Party. He was the vice president to Andrew Jackson. Along with him, he was instrumental in bringing together a number of different coalitions into the banner of the modern Democratic Party in the late 1820s. He was the leader of a machine called the Albany Regency, so named for the hotel where they met. Van Buren introduced many elements of machine politics into the American experiment in self-government. One prominent member of the Albany Regency was Silas Wright, who's the individual at the bottom left corner. Silas Wright coined the phrase, "to the victor go the spoils," and hence our name today, the spoils system, whereby the winner of a campaign can effectively switch the personnel of an agency and staff it with his own people. Having won the election, they can do what they want with the spoils, which are tax-paying, taxpayer-funded government jobs. Other noteworthy machines include that of North Carolina's own Furniford McClendall Simmons, which is a fantastic name, Furniford McClendall Simmons. He's a U.S. Senator from North Carolina, and his position on the Commerce Committee gave him access to federal money for projects that benefited North Carolina, such as the Intercoastal Waterway. Then there's Tom Pendergrass down there in the middle on the bottom. Tom Pendergrass was the boss of a machine in Kansas City, powerful enough to launch the career of Harry S. Truman, who was mocked ever since then as the senator from Pendergrass. And more recently, we have the machines of Chicago's powerful and influential Daley family, Richard J. Daley and his son Richard M. Daley. Daley, the elder's machine, was built upon simultaneously being the chairman of the Cook County Democratic Party and the mayor of Chicago, which gave him an estimated 35,000 jobs to give out to his supporters as a reward for their support in his campaigns and day-to-day operations in New York. But of course, the most notorious political machine in American history is that of Tammany Hall. Located in Manhattan, Tammany Hall dominated New York state politics through the 19th century and into the 20th, thanks to their control of America's largest and most influential city, New York. Tammany Hall's most infamous sachem or leader was William Boss Tweed, convicted in 1877 of having stolen $25 million from the city of New York, although some estimates range as high as $200 million. So what did Tammany Hall do to earn the title of America's most infamous political machine? Well, first, they were accused of all sorts of vote harvesting tactics that included sending gangs of Tammany supporters out to intimidate voters, paying men of questionable character to vote as often as possible, and bribing police officers to look the other way. At times, they meddled with the count, which is the ballot box after the election, even going so far as to turn off the gas lights and then stuff ballot boxes with votes in the darkness. Once in power, Tweed and his close circle of associates, dubbed the Tweed Ring, got too greedy, and they started skimming 15 to 35% off of public works contracts awarded by the city of New York. Any public works contract submitted to the city had to be marked up somewhere in the order of 15 to 35% if it was going to get through, with Tweed skimming that money off for himself. And lastly, members of the Tweed Ring bought real estate based on the insider information they had access to. Most interestingly, Tweed and his associates funded their spending not through taxes, but through bonds, through selling government bonds and running up deficits in the city of New York. Such a scenario placed the burden of funding current spending on future generations, or at least far off into the future, that Tweed would not be in power and would not have to face criticism for taking on so much debt. These practices were all found out during the election of 1868, when Tammany then just simply went too far, buying votes, messing with the count, and so on, which prompted a committee and then a series of famous New York Times articles exposing Tammany corruption and the Tweed Ring. Now, from Tammany, we can describe the following common factors about political machines in general. One, they have to secure reliable voting blocks that have a very well-defined special interest that can be secured through government action. For Tammany, such a bloc was a newly arrived population of immigrants from Ireland, individuals who were poor, relatively isolated, cut off from their home country, and Tammany gave them not only a sense of community and belonging, sometimes they gave them jobs, sometimes the benefit was so simple as a bag of coal to get through the winter. And in so doing, they were able to secure the Irish immigrant population in New York as reliable voters for years to come. In this way, charitable functions distributed by the machine were a way of securing votes and securing political support for the foreseeable future. Another common factor is its organized bands of supporters, as these supporters, however small, can make all the difference in an election. Herein, we may use words like grassroots and ground game and boots on the ground, campaign staff, and so on to describe these organizers working on behalf of the machine and of the party boss. Now, for Tammany and other city machines, these incentives revolved around the idea of patronage and of giving jobs to supporters of greater worth, significance, and influence. The ability to dish out jobs like this on such a scale is really the idea behind the spoil system, with politicians rewarding his people with jobs in the same way a general might plunder a city. We can also include on there contracts for public works, such as building roads and bridges. Those can also be directed towards political supporters. And all of these items are given out at the state expense, out of people's tax dollars. But the people who benefit are the machine and its operators. Third, the workings of such machines increase political corruption. They create the incentive to look out for yourself and for the party boss who keeps everything running smoothly, rather than for the common good. The machine also weakens the system of checks and balances inherent to our federal system of government, since individuals may serve different branches and yet all be members of the same machine. So here we can draw on the insight of Ludwig von Mises in his action axiom that human beings act to satisfy their desired ends. Most individuals act to improve their material well-being. Why should this not be any different at the ballot box, particularly when politicians are promising to make your life better every campaign cycle through such actions? Now, much of this changed in 1883. 2 years prior, a disgruntled, dissatisfied, disaffected office seeker assassinated President James Garfield, and Congress passed the Pendleton Act in 1883 in response. The Pendleton Act instituted a merit-based system with an exam to ensure candidates were well qualified for the job. And while the Pendleton Act affected only a small percentage of federal jobs, something like 10%, the figure was expected to grow over time. The act, however, did not affect the post office. But if this kind of politics is inherent to human nature and is always there because it operates on the desire human beings have to act for ends that are in their best interest and benefit themselves, it would not be long before a new kind of patronage was found and then administered by an ever-expanding government. And coming upon this new vein of patronage, my insight comes from an influential Tammany leader named George Washington Plunkett. Fantastic name. All of these party bosses, the fourth common factor is that they have fantastic names. George Washington Plunkett. In 1905, he gave a series of lectures entitled Plunkett of Tammany Hall, where he carefully explained how Tammany worked and why its workings worked so well. He writes in Tammany Hall about how the Tammany political machine worked. If a family is burned out, I don't ask if they're Republicans or Democrats, and I don't refer them to the charity organization society. I just get quarters for them. I buy clothes for them if their clothes were burned up, and I fix them up till they get things running again. It's philanthropy, but it's politics too. Mighty good politics. Who can tell how many votes one of these fires bring me? The poor are the most grateful people in the world, and let me tell you, they have more friends in their neighborhoods than the rich have in theirs. If there's a family in my district, I want to know it before the charitable societies do. And me and my men are first on the ground. I have a special corps to look up such cases. The consequence is that the poor look up to George W. Plunkett as a father. Come to him in trouble, and don't forget him on election day. Another thing, I can always get a job for a deserving man. I make it a point to keep track of the jobs, and it seldom happens that I don't have a few up my sleeve ready for use. I know every big employer in the district, and the whole city for that matter, and they ain't in the habit of saying no to me when I ask them for a job. So, what if elected officials at the federal level realize how well this brand of politics works at the local level, in the city level, the municipal level, and sought to recreate that brand of politics, but at the federal level, where the stakes were much higher, the spoils are much bigger, and the tax dollars just keep coming in day after day. Plunkett hits upon a profound truth hiding in plain sight. The charitable contributions of a city government, as in Manhattan, could move the recipients of such charity to vote for the party they believed had helped them. Tammany Hall gave the voters the charitable donations, the money, but the money really came from local taxpayers, hence the legal plunder. Now, the rest of my talk largely hinges on the New Deal. It's the hinge point, as it were, between big government and the political machine. The New Deal was a flurry of legislative agencies enacted by Franklin Delano Roosevelt during the hardship of the Great Depression. And much of my remaining lecture really centers on how one reads the New Deal and the intentions of FDR and the extent to which the expansion of government and of government planning policies can produce the favorable outcomes politicians like FDR promise. As to the cause of the Great Depression, the conventional wisdom, in my opinion, is wrong, but stated thus: the Depression started because of the excesses of capitalism, beginning with a massive bubble in the stock market, which then, when it popped, crashed the market. Americans, afraid they were going to lose their savings, ran to their local banks and withdrew their money. And as banks closed, more and more liquidity disappeared from the market. Now, the abundance of manufactured goods and farm goods had no one to buy them, and the economy was left without any means to get running again. Now, while I would argue government actions at the Federal Reserve and tightening credit, and at Congress and imposing higher tariffs really made the stock market crash that much worse, but my opinion here is really irrelevant, because Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the Brain Trust came in to save capitalism through the various components of the New Deal. In 1932, Franklin Roosevelt ran on a platform promising to cut spending, balance the budget, all of which were in line with expectations for what a president should and should not do while in office. But with unemployment at 25% and the nation traumatized by the hardship of the Depression, the American people were more willing to let Roosevelt take some bold steps to fix the economy. Roosevelt's aristocratic bearing and calm, confident demeanor, carried over the radio for his fireside chats, could implement such a policy without taking the United States too close to the model of fascist Italy. Now, the New Deal is a vast array of government programs meant to lift the forgotten man or woman out of poverty through the power of government, outlined in Roosevelt's ideas of relief, rescue, and reform. Such agencies focused on setting prices for goods, wages for workers, or creating government jobs in various states throughout the country. One can see the influence of John Maynard Keynes in these government programs, as the infusion of cash into one broken sector of the economy is intended to revive every other sector. Oddly enough, though, Roosevelt didn't take Keynes's advice or really appreciate that Keynes had reached out to him and offered his help, as if Roosevelt had a better idea of what he was doing than even Keynes himself. So these New Deal agencies focus on injecting money into the economy to stimulate demand, controlling prices, creating government jobs for the unemployed, through acts such as the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which did that for farm products, the National Recovery Administration, which created codes and policies of fair competitions between companies in various industries. Others included the Works Progress Administration, which with a grant of $15 billion became the largest employer in the country. the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Social Security Administration, which amongst the New Deal agencies is one of the few that still greatly affect us today. The number of federal employees during this era increased from 591,000 in 1933 to 1,081,000 as of September 1941, a figure that would only triple by the end of World War II in 1945 at 3,370,000 federal employees, given that nothing justifies the expansion of government like conducting a war, especially one as vast and as important as defeating Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. But were these actions taken to save capitalism